Hey guys, it's Alyssa from AlyssaNalani.com. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about what I read in January. A couple of videos ago, I asked you guys whether or not you'd be interested in me talking about books and what I'm reading and my thoughts on what I'm reading, and you guys said that you would be. So from now on, I'm going to try to do a monthly review on what I read in a month and kind of share my thoughts and recommendations and so forth. So I'm really excited to start this conversation. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and it should be a lot of fun. First off, I do want to say that all the books that I finished last month were audiobooks. And so I am working on some actual physical books, reading those, but they don't get done quite as quickly because you can multitask when you're listening to an audiobook. So when you're trying to get a lot of things done, it does prove to be very convenient to listen to a book rather than to read the physical copy. However, I do love physical books. As you can see, I have this stack that I'm going to be working through. I'm doing a whole separate video on this stack later, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be out later this week. But anyway, so I love physical books. I just happen to consume a lot of audio because it's more convenient. And also, let me just explain what kind of reader I am so that you know whether or not my book talk is something that you'd be interested in. There are so many different readers in the on YouTube, and especially in the BookTube community. So if you found my video because of the way it's titled, I just wanted to let you know what kind of reader I am. I am a Christian, so I read spiritual growth, books of interest in the Christian genre. I also read historical nonfiction. I do read fiction. I tend to be very choosy with the kind of fiction I stick with, and so my viewpoints and just my Christian worldview, my lens is going to come out in the comments. And what else do I read? Memoir. And yeah, classics. I love classics. I haven't been reading them as often as I'd like, so hopefully I'll be incorporating more of that into my reading. So just so you know, that's what I'm into. That's what you'll hear about as I talk about what I read. Just wanted to let you know that. So in January, I read 5 books. I completed 5 books. And so I'm just going to go through the list and tell you what I thought. The first book was called Letters to the Church by Francis Chan. And this was an absolutely incredible read. For anybody who has never heard of Francis Chan, he wrote a book a while ago called Crazy Love, which I do highly recommend. I read it a long time ago, and it's a fantastic book. So definitely put that on your reading list if you have not. Letters to the Church is his latest book. It came out, I believe, last year. And in it, he talks about his struggles with, or his burden, maybe struggle is not the best word, but his burden to see the church look more like the early church that we read about in the book of Acts. And some of his struggle, I'll use that word, with how we do church in America, as opposed to what is written in the Bible, and also what he experienced when he was overseas in other countries, and how the underground persecuted church is functions, and how those people live. And so, having had immense success in his ministry in years past, he talks about how, God did bless in his ministry, but he thinks that now moving forward, we really, as Christians, need to rethink this culture of, I'm just going to go to church and sit through a service and go home, and that's it. That's church. Whereas in the Word and in other places in the country, church is a lifestyle. It's not a place you go to just to get your service in, to get your, hour and a half in and check it off your to-do list. And so I'm not, it goes so much more deeper and even broader than that, but he really just shares his heart in this realm, and what he has been studying and grappling through. And it's it's not, it's an easy read in that it was easy to get through, and it was thought-provoking. But if your experience with church has been very comfortable and culturally mainstream, maybe, and you're okay with that, and you don't see anything wrong with that, then this might be a difficult read, because it really pushes for, he asks you to rethink that. And my husband and I, it was our first book of the year, and we listened to it together, and just in our lives personally, with some things that are going on right now, it was right on time. Like, this was the book that we needed to read. And moving forward, this is the book that we're going to kind of carry with us in some of the things that are going on in our life. And so it was fantastic. It was thought-provoking. It was fantastic. I think it was very biblically sound. You know, with like the points that he was making. I don't agree with all of his theology, so I have to just caveat that. We're not, I don't believe all of the same things theologically. However, his basis and his points, I think, were spot on as far as where he was coming from. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. We plan on getting hard copies and like highlighting and taking notes and all of that. So we are also working on his book Multiply, which is about discipleship, and that one's really good as well. It doesn't read quite the same. It has a lot of like questions in it. I need to stop because this is going to go in the February what I read video. So I need to stop, but it's very good. We're listening to it on audio, and we want to get hard copies of that as well. So Letters to the Church, Francis Chan, highly recommend. It was 5 stars for me. The second book that I read was called Radium Girls by Kate Moore, and the subtitle is The Dark Story of America's Shining Women. Now, had this not been an audiobook for me, I don't think I would have been able to get through it, because it was very intense, it was very heavy, it was very it was saturated with fact. It's historical nonfiction. And so because it was audio, it made it a lot easier to get through the story. Well written, fascinating. But just because of the subject matter and all the information that was just packed into it, audio made it way easier for me, for my brain. So anyway, the story is about these women back during the World War I era, and then it goes on into subsequent years. But it starts out in the World War I era, I should say a little bit before, when these women were contracted to work in radium dial factories. And what they were doing was painting the faces of watches with self-luminous paint made from radium. Now, the science back then did not know how incredibly dangerous and poisonous the substance was. However, the science knew enough, and should have known enough, to at least, I don't know if it would have prevented the start of the practice, but it should not have gone on as long as it did. And so anyway, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, nor tell too much of the story. So these women were contracted to paint watch dials and with radium paint, and they were not only touching or coming in contact with this substance, they were also doing what was called, I think, lip dipping. I think I said that right. Where they would put, because the brush, they had to use a small brush, and they had to paint these very fine, precise numbers on the watch faces. And so they had to, what they would do is they would put the brush in their mouth to make it a tip, and then put it in the paint, and then paint. And then whenever it got, like, you know how bristles do, they'll, like, fray out, or whatever you call that. And when they separate it like that, they would put it back in their mouth to make it a tip again, and then dip it. So I'm reading this book, and I'm listening to how these innocent, and these are young girls too. These are like teenagers, early 20s, and they're making bank. Like, they are making really good money. You know, you have to think like middle class or lower middle class women who would otherwise be getting jobs, you know, lower paying jobs in other factories. On the pay scale, they're making bank to do this job and help out their families, or, you know, whatever they're using the money for. And so I'm reading this, and they're putting radium in their mouth, and they're, you know, the culture at the time was all crazed about radium. It was the new wonder substance, yada, yada, yada. And I could not believe, as the story progressed and as it got worse and worse and worse, and these lives are just being senselessly destroyed, and the actual facts about how dangerous radium was being suppressed or ignored, or just not looked into properly. And there were lies for the sake of money, for the sake of, you know, just saving face, and all this stuff that these women had to go through. It was just a harrowing experience. And there ends up being, you know, court involved, like legislation and all this kind of stuff. And the long and the short of it is, this story, while it was just horrific, it also ended with, but it did not happen in vain, because these women left a legacy behind them. And because of what happened, we now have some of the things that we have in the workforce, workers' rights, these kinds of things. And, you know, whenever you read historical accounts of just awful, awful things that we as human beings put ourselves through and put each other through, it's like, it stinks that we had to go through that, or that we put ourselves through that. Some of it's self-inflicted, some of it's just, I don't know, the way of the times, I guess, for lack of better words. Progress, just needing to go forth. I'm losing my words, guys. Anyway, it's amazing how progress works. It's amazing how science works. It's amazing what we used to not know. It's amazing. And then it made me think, and my husband pointed it out because I was telling him about it, it's amazing what we still don't know. And, you know, it was very thought-provoking. And I'm mumbling, and I'm rambling, but it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. And if you like history and you want a story about like strong women, this is definitely one to check out. If you find it hard to kind of get through heavy subject matter, you know, on paper, I definitely recommend the audiobook. It was well read and just all over well done. I gave it 4 stars. I'm very, very stingy with my 5 stars. So it was a fantastic book. Like, I didn't have any problem with the book, but I am very stingy with my 5 stars. But I gave it 4. Just really, really well done. And if you have the chance to see the hard copy, it does have pictures. It has photographs of some of these women in the story. So interesting material to look up. Book number 3 that I read and finished was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. Oh my goodness. So I thought after Radium Girls, I needed something lighter. And I should have known better, because I saw the trailer for the movie and I saw people's comments about how sad the movie was. And so I really should have known better. But I thought, oh, it's like romantic. I mean, it's not romantic comedy, but it's like, you know, it should be light and, you know, sad, but, you know, lighter. It was not. It was not. This story it didn't hit me until, like, at the end. And if you know the story, you know what I'm talking about. But it didn't hit me until the end. It was well written. I thought it was clever. The writing was clever. I think that the subject matter was handled well. This is a very difficult subject. And I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But when you're talking about physical, handicaps or terminal illness, caretaking, life expectancy, the quality of life, these kinds of things, these are very personal issues that no matter how much experience you may have, maybe in a medical field or, different kinds of capacities, the patient or the person who's actually dealing with the physical condition is the only one who can really know what it's like. We can't ever step into that person's shoes unless we are going through that very same thing, and to that magnitude or to that extent. And we can empathize and we can wish the best for somebody and all of that, but we can't ever know for sure the depth and the breadth of what they're experiencing. And so this is what the author is exploring in this very touching story. And I think she did it very, very well. I cried. It takes a lot for me to cry. Well, actually, it doesn't take as much. That's my default statement, but the older I get, it does not take as much for me to cry anymore. But I cry. And I think a lot of that had to do with, now that I'm married, you see or you read a romance or you hear a song or whatever, and you just get all the feels. And I put myself in the character's place, and I just could not imagine being in that kind of situation. I cannot imagine that kind of pain. I can't, it just hit hard and I cried. Oh man. So anyway, the story is about a girl who takes care of a man who's quadriplegic, and all that ensues, and the bond that they develop, and the inevitability of a choice that has already been made. And how do you deal with that? And how do you move on from that and live with it? And yeah, well done, very well written. The only thing that I do have to say is it did have more language than what I'm usually comfortable with. Like I said at the beginning, I try to be choosy about what I read. I stuck with it because I did want to know the rest of the story. So just be aware, it did have some language in it. So if it was, it is a movie, but even if it weren't a movie, the rating that I would give it would definitely be PG-13. So anyway, but yeah, well written, but man, I cried, and now I want to see the movie. So, okay, book number 4 that I read was called The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Marianne Schaffers. I think that's how you pronounce her name, and Annie Barrows. And this was a very good book. It was highly reviewed, and so I decided to go for it. And it's also on Netflix or Hulu, one of the two. I think it's Netflix. And I wanted to read it before I watched it. So this is a story that is about a young writer who comes across this literary society that was started during the German occupation of their community. And the book is written in the style of letters being exchanged between her and the folks in this community, and how she gets to know them, and the stories that they're telling about their life and their experience during this time in their history, during the occupation, and then goes on to visit the place and develop relationship with these people and so forth. And so, because I was a little distracted, I can't go too deep into it because I don't remember all the bits and pieces. But I did enjoy a lot of the stories that were told, and maybe enjoy as I was intrigued by them. A lot of the stories that were told were difficult because we're talking about German, Nazi occupation, and some of them were very sad. And good grief, I had just read Me Before You, and before that, Radium Girls. Like, I just, bam, 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 I'm like coming on this really tough subject matter, one after the other. But overall, it was very well done. It was well written. And because it was audio, it was well performed, and it was performed by several people to do the different voices of the different people in the story, which was really nice because we have so many letters going back and forth. It probably would have been a lot less, it would have been less easier. It would have been harder to keep up with who's writing to whom. So that was really, really nice. So the audio is very good if you have an opportunity to listen to it. Book number 5 is the first in a series, and it's called Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear. And I was intrigued with this one because I had seen the covers of her books for a while and had marked several of them on my TBR. And so when it became available on my library audio app, I use Libby for anybody who's interested. When it became available, I hopped on it. And it was right up my alley. I like detective stories. I like old-time radio detective shows from back in like the 30s, 40s, 50s. And this is a story about a woman who is setting herself up to be a private investigator. And this is post-World War I. This is post-World War I, I believe. And so, of course, this is not a normal thing for a woman to be doing, and so she is in a season of having to prove herself and that kind of thing. And so you're going through the story with her and the case that she's working on, and you also get taken back to her experience as a nurse during the war, and how that kind of plays into who she is, so on and so forth. I will also say that I did get a little distracted, so I missed some of the finer points, but I thought it was well done, and I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading the next installments. There are several books in the series, which I'm excited about. I think I gave this one a 3 or a 4. Again, I am very picky and selective with my 5-star ratings. A 3 is a good for me. Like, there was nothing bad about it necessarily. It's just, it was good. It was good. All right, guys, those are the 5 books that I read and completed in January. I hope you enjoyed this. I am so sorry if I ramble too much. I'm gonna have to get used to this kind of video and kind of be better about my comments. But anyway, if you have any questions about what I read, if you have any comments, let me know. If you want to, you can let me know what you read in January. If you have any recommendations for me, definitely leave them in the comments. I'm always up for good recommendations. And then at the end of the month, we'll talk about what I'm currently reading in the month of February. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.